Welcome back to the Closing Advantage, strategic insights for title agents, real property, real stories, real people, real consequences. My name is Bill O'Connell and I am your host. I'm coming to you live from the F&F Family Studios in beautiful downtown Annapolis, Maryland. Okay, today we're going to start our discussion on claims. But before I get there, I just want to say those last two episodes were hard. Okay, because you could spend hours and hours and hours on the owner's policy, whether it's the standard policy or the homeowner's policy. I cannot say this enough. Know it, read it, keep it with you at all times. As we go through this journey, we'll be revisiting it often, but I wanted to give you the basics of it, so now you have it. Now, this show is designed so that you can listen to it more than once. And of course, I told you before, if you have questions, please email me to bill.o'connell@fnf.com, or you can find me on LinkedIn. I will respond. I love hearing from you. That's what I do. Okay? I answer questions all day, solve problems all day. Don't be afraid. Don't ever be afraid to call your underwriter. That's what we're here for. We see things hundreds of times, over and over and over. You may see it one time and not know what to do. Okay. If you've seen it now, I will tell you that I do get questions I haven't had before, and that's what makes it interesting. Okay. So, but I get a lot of questions that I know the answer right up here in the top of my head. Okay. So, but you're not going to see as many because I'm a clearinghouse. You're not a clearinghouse for this kind of stuff. You learn stuff along the way. And actually, I learned stuff from you too. So please share that with me. Okay, so enough of that. So why are people starving for claim stories? Well, and data, and that's because, first of all, there's no wreck on the side of the road that we can stare at as we're driving by. There's no fire engines racing down the street when we get a title claim. There's no television shows involving a title insurance claim, although we could probably create one. There are instead all of the work that goes on in producing a policy goes on behind closed doors and out of the sight of the consumer. So they never see all the stuff that you need to do to close a real estate transaction, to clean up from some prior transaction. They don't know it. They don't want to know it, but you know it. So I once was listening to a guy by the name of Les Brown. He's a well-known motivational speaker, and he tells the story of how he lost his first home because he listened to somebody who told him he didn't need title insurance. He never made that mistake again. Don't let your customers make that mistake. Second, the product is not like anything that people commonly understand as insurance. Third, we want to know stories because we want to learn from the mistakes of others. I always say that it's nice when we learn from our own mistakes, but I'd much rather learn from the mistakes of others. Fourth, it helps us learn how the product that we sell works in real life. And finally, it helps us show the value of our product to our customers. So when the customer asks for some examples, you'll be ready. So let's start out. Well, Bill. What's a claim, Bill? I'm glad you asked that question. Okay, so now all I want to do is I want to see a show of hands, or you can shout it out. Yes, that's one. That's not one. Okay, just tell me. I'm going to give you 4 scenarios. You tell me which one's a claim. Okay, so number 1, the owner claims that the neighbor installed the fence over the boundary line. Number 2, a lender claims the land is going to tax sale. 3, a lender claims it cannot foreclose because the legal description contained in their deed of trust has errors. And finally, number 4, an owner files a claim because he lost control of his car and took out a portion of his garage. Tally your answers? Okay, so which one of those is it? Spoiler, they're all claims. Some of them may be denied, but the bottom line is they're all claims that the insurer has to process and figure out, investigate. So just because it doesn't sound like, that's not a claim, you know what? I never tell people you don't have a claim, okay? If they think they have a claim, they should file a claim. Now, the claims guys don't like that when I say that, but the truth is, you buy insurance, okay? You need to be able to use it. People don't understand title insurance, so file the claim. So now let's just say, now right off the bat, okay, you hear the one about the guy who took out his garage. Okay, of course, what? That's not a claim. That's call your car insurer or maybe your homeowners. Okay, but what if the reason the guy can't rebuild his garage is because a prior owner didn't obtain a permit on the addition that was put on in the back of the house? Okay, well, now we have a problem here. Just don't think of it as it's not, and it's not my job to tell them it's not a claim, not covered. Okay, that's why we have professionals who do that, who do this every day, and they get good at it. How do you get good at something? Repetition. Okay, you see the guy taking batting practice. You see the guy out on the golf course. You see the chef who's trying to perfect a recipe. Okay, repetition is how you get good at something. Okay, so what are the sources of claims? So there was a study done by Millam and Company in 2024, and what they came up with was that most claims come from closing errors, search and exam errors, and fraud and forgery. After that, there were recording issues, access problems, easements, mechanics liens, and boundary and survey problems. Okay, and then there's also going to be the oddball claim, okay, that you can't make this stuff up. I'm telling you, you just can't. When I was litigating, the stuff that came across my desk, I'd be scratching my head. I'm like, well, oh my goodness. If I was the best fiction writer out there, I could not have come up with this. But it really happened. So, okay, so what are some common closing errors? Okay, so that's the incorrect legal descriptions, failure to pay or complete the process of releasing voluntary and involuntary liens, or closing out HELOCs, home equity line of credits. One of my earliest claims was the closing, paid the HELOC down to zero. And then several years later, when the purchaser went to sell the property, this unreleased HELOC pops up its ugly head, and it was for like 95,000. And okay, well, we got to go clear that. I contact the lender, and guess what? The line had been drawn back up to $95,000. So you always got to close those things out. The bank's documents say that they won't close it unless they get instructed by the borrower to close it. And I've had cases, there's case law out there that says, no, you knew he paid it down to zero. You knew you should have released it. And the courts say, no. The loan docs say they won't close it until you tell them to. So keep that in mind. HAMP loans, home affordable mortgage modifications. Now they don't have that program anymore, but they created it back when we had the financial crisis, the housing meltdown, and oftentimes people get confused because they go to the first lender, the original lender, and they say we need to pay this off. And the lender's like, okay, well, here's how to get paid in full. There's nothing, no second, no nothing. And they get confused. Don't get confused. There's a deed of trust out there that secures that HAMP loan. You need to get two demands. And that's typically, you're going to pay off HUD on that. Okay, sometimes we have people forget to execute documents. That's where you need to be thorough, and you need to make sure that everybody signed everything, initialed everything. Okay, I've had claims where the borrower claims, I didn't sign that, I didn't initial that. You got to be careful. So what else? Sometimes there's incomplete acknowledgments. That's the notarial certificate. Now, some states have curative laws that fix that over time, but I would prefer not to have to wait out that period. And then finally, sometimes it's the failure to record. Okay. There are some jurisdictions where it's difficult to record a document because of all the toll booths it has to go through to get there. Sometimes it's the clerk. It's like, can I reject? How can I reject this? Instead of how can I get it on record? It's how can I reject it? And then, of course, they don't tell you all the problems with it. They tell you one, send it back to you. You get it 3 weeks later, and then you fix it. You send it back, and then they go, okay, by the way, you need this to fix too. And this process can go on a long time. Okay. So make sure you do it right the first time. Okay. What else? Okay. The searches. Look, the records related to real property are complicated. Okay. The abstractors are human. They make mistakes. They miss stuff. There's stuff that gets misindexed. There's stuff that we can't find. So those are your common searching errors. There could be a break in the chain of title. Okay. Sometimes we miss that and it becomes a problem. So then we got to go fix it. Okay. But you're not always the one doing the search. You're probably not going to be the one doing the search. So you're relying on others. So even when the abstractor does his or her work perfectly, there can be mistakes made along the way in the chain. And I always tell people, one of the earliest, cases that I read said title insurance is an acknowledgement that an error or a mistake has been made. Think about that. So when I tell people that, they say, "Well, I can't tell the customer that." They're going to say, "What? You made a mistake? What am I paying you for?" And I'm like, "No, you're not the one that made the mistake. It's somebody else made the mistake." There's lots of people that have to be involved in the transfer of title to real property. Any one of those folks could make a mistake, and most of them you have no control over. So don't forget that. Finally, so when you look at your search, you're looking at you're examining the search that comes back. You just got to be skeptical. You got to look at everything. Somebody once told me, look, if you're going to read it at all, read it all. So one time, not too long ago, I had a claim because the examination, the abstractor did his job perfectly. The examination saw the document that the abstractor pointed out, saw the first word that said easement, okay, and moved on. Okay, but actually it was an easement and a conveyance. So the county was putting in a trail, bike path, walking path along the side of the road, and they had to take a piece of all the people who lived along that road. And so all we did was we included an exception in Schedule B of the policy for the easement contained in the document recorded at book and page in the county records. And so the agent wanted us to say, well, we've accepted to that document. No, not quite. We accepted to the temporary easement for construction that was contained in that deed. Okay. But we also insured title to all the land in the prior legal description. So we didn't save and accept the portion that was conveyed about a year before. Okay, which turned out to be, well, the county paid $155,000 for it. So presumably that's a pretty good estimate of what it would cost to make the insured whole. Okay, so don't forget, if you're going to read it at all, read it all. Okay, so what can we do, Bill, to prevent these claims? Look, if we get involved, we probably can prevent most claims because we can figure out a solution to avoid the problem. Okay. But we need to slow down, number one. I know you're all under pressure. Do it faster. Do it faster. Everybody wants to close, yesterday. Okay. Nobody wants to hear about a title problem. Okay. So just slow down. Same thing with you folks who are doing the exam. Slow down. When I get to the end of the day and I've got, 5 or 6 emails left over that came in at, whatever, 4 o'clock, and I start looking at them because I want to get it done. I want to get it out. And I see that I'm reading the same thing over and over and over. It doesn't make sense. I can't figure it out. That's when I know, okay, time to stop, Bill. Come back in the morning, figure it out. And then when I get back in the morning, when my head's fresh and clear and I got brain cells, I read this thing. I'm like, that wasn't complicated. Okay. So know your limitations. If you are feeling rushed, you got to slow down. If you're feeling tired, you need to take a break. So I give a lot of presentations. One day I was given a presentation for a legislative update, and it's, legislative updates are, that's hard to make it interesting, but you do your best. Anyways, at the end of it, a guy comes up to me and tells me he's a real estate investor. He buys property, fixes them up, and sells them. And so He tells me, he goes, "Look, you know what? I used to think that title insurance wasn't worth it, and I never bought it. And then one time, I had a claim, and guess what? All that money I saved from all those policies, I gave it back and more to resolve this one issue that nobody would have known about, and it took me a year to do it, and it was very painful. So I tell everyone now, I always buy title insurance. Don't ever not buy title insurance. You will be grateful that you did. Okay, what else we got? I think that's it for the day. So remember, don't just close it, own it. That's your closing advantage.